Let us enter into the spirit of worship with these words by William Henry Channing. To live content with small means, to seek elegance rather than luxury, and refinement rather than fashion, to be worthy, not respectable, and wealthy, not rich, to listen to stars and birds, babes and sages, with open heart, to study hard, to think quietly, act frankly, talk gently, await occasions, hurry never. In a word, to let the spiritual, unbidden, and unconscious grow up through the common. This is my symphony. And let us light our chalice with these words. Contentment is not the fulfillment of what you want, but the realization of how much you already have.
Good morning. Good morning. And welcome to this place of fellowship, peace, and love. We're so glad you're with us. I'm Ron Solberg, this morning's worship associate. We welcome you all to the service, but we're especially pleased to offer this morning's greeting to guests and others who may be relatively new to our church family. In addition to participating in our service, we invite one and all to join us afterwards for coffee downstairs. If you're new to our church, please sign our guest book in the back and receive and make sure you have a name tag, like I don't have right now. You will receive our news and notes, our weekly news and notes newsletter as well when you sign the guest book. Also, those especially new to our church should consider attending the new UU workshop at 1145 in the RE building in the second floor, chapel. Even those who are members and should consider attending this workshop. I think you'll find it very interesting. It'll kind of renew your information and news about our church. That reminds me that we offer nursery care for the little ones in the RE building, you may take your little one over across the alley downstairs for care if you would like, anytime during the service. And of course, after the story for all, which our guest minister will be giving, our children will return to the RE building with our Religious and Education Program Director, Pam Porter. Where are you, Pam? Oh, there you are. Hi, Pam. So many to thank for the service and hospitality this morning. Our pianist, Jamie Passman. Thank you, Jamie. Technicians, Gene Schaefer and Alex Dvorak. Alex behind the desk back there with the earphones on, and Gene, I don't know where you are, but you're there someplace. You've been, both of you are so helpful. And of course, our hospitality team. And one of the members of the hospitality team is just seating herself right there, Pat Guos. Pat and Joe Guos are the team captains for hospitality this day. And they're also responsible for the coffee and some things that you will get downstairs. Thank you, folks. Now, we take a moment during our weekly services to recognize someone of considerable importance to us. And of course, you're all of considerable importance to us, but we'd love to take this opportunity to recognize someone. And I'm going to identify this person with two words, and I expect that you probably will know immediately after I've given you those two words whom I'm recognizing. Landscape architect. Charlie Fisher. Charlie, where are you? Are you there, Charlie? He's out front. Okay. Well, Charlie, in addition to the many contributions to the grounds, Charlie designed the Naturalist Play Lot that's on the other side of our RE building. And if you haven't visited that facility, do so. It's remarkable. And then on the other side, he helped with the construction and the design of the Sandy Price Memory and Conversational Masonry and Rock Circle that appears right over here. And we use it regularly during the summer in particular for our services when we're outside. Sandy Price was, and her husband Larry were former members of our church. They moved, well, she passed away a few years ago, but Larry moved west. In addition to the landscape work that Charlie's done, he's done so much. He's been a board member, longtime member of our Celebration Singers, and the play reading group, as well as a member of a multitude of committees and discussion groups, including the one that we have Peter Crowder leads once a month in the RE building. But probably and most important, a longtime and loyal and supportive friend and hero for us and to us all. And not just for this week, but for literally decades. Thank you, Charlie. Now at this time, I would like to also introduce our guest minister for the day, Reverend Derek Jackson, who last visited us a couple of years ago. He remembers maybe 2.5 or 3 years ago, but he was with us at that point. The Reverend Jackson, it's impressive background. Is the Director of Ministries for Lifelong Learning of the U Ministers Association and an affiliated community minister with the Second Unitarian Church of Chicago. He's one of the authors of the book centering Navigating Race, Authenticity, and Power in Ministry. Reverend Derek is active in DRUM, the UU Ministry for People of Color, and is the treasurer for Healing Moments, ministry for caregivers of people with Alzheimer's. What an impressive background. Thank you for all that you do. He is also a founding minister, a member of the Chicago Playback Theater Ensemble, and is an avid knitter. Reverend Derek and his husband, Reverend James Olson, live with their 2 cats, Merlin and Morgana. Okay. Reverend Jackson will continue with the story for all ages after our hymn. But before we do that, before we start with the hymn, I'd like to make another couple of recognitions, and this is so very special as the one I was making for Charlie. Let's get my words together here. Recognition of gratitude for another, a work of art appearing in the southwest corner of our living room for the first time today. Be sure that you take a look at it. It's a painting of our building. For the past few months, Peter Crowder, Peter over here, has posted a weekly news and notes announcement that he was creating paintings in exchange for a contribution of $400 to our church. A very generous offer, Peter. The story behind this beautiful painting on the wall in the living room is this, and what a story it is. In early December, Nancy Krantz, Nancy, where are you? Stand, Nancy. Nancy Krantz organized a fundraising activity to create this painting. She was inspired to do so by the quality of Peter's work. In fact, over the fireplace in the back, you'll find another one of his paintings. It's a really unusual painting, this one. I'm going to ask you about the inspiration for that one after the service. But Nancy moved forward requesting contributions for a painting for us of our church, and that Peter would do. And she received $600 in donations, so that not only do we have the painting, which is beautiful, but a contribution of $600 to the church. So thank Nancy and Peter. Both stand, please. What a glorious morning in so many ways. Introducing Reverend Jackson, contributions of you two, and then Charlie. And now, let's move on to our hymn. Please stand as you're able. Number 361. Let me put the words up here. One, two, three. Rejoice around as you go underneath the children who would like to come forward and hear the story are invited to do so.
Or anyone young at heart as well is welcome to come forward as well.
He just wants to be with his wife.
Our story this morning is Nelson Packrat by Sharon Bajeri. Nelson Packrat was a pack rat who lived in a small cave. One day, his mother looked around the tunnels of their nest and thought it was time for a spring cleaning. "Nelson, I can barely get into your room. You've collected too many things. You need to get rid of some of them." "But Mom, I need everything," he said. "What about this?" Mrs. Packrat asked, pointing to a colored brooch. "What do you need that for?" "It was the first thing I brought home. It's my favorite." Mrs. Packrat looked into Nelson's big, bright, bulging eyes. "Yes, I remember now. It's very pretty." She sighed and then pointed at something else. "But this, I can't think why you would want this old, worn-out sock." "Mom," he gasped, "I traded that for a watch, one I found one night next to a camper. It keeps me warm at night." "Nelson, you are growing. There isn't enough room for you and all your stuff here. You need to make a decision. Some things have to go. Yes, Mom. He looked around at all his favorite things and wondered how he was going to choose. You have a week. Otherwise, I'll clean it out myself. Okay, Mom, he said, whiskers drooping as Mrs. Packrat walked away. Suddenly, an idea popped into Nelson's head. He could swap some of the bigger things for smaller things. After all, that is what Packrats did. Then his room wouldn't be so cluttered. His mother would be happy and his problem would be solved. Nelson put the items he thought were too big and that he no longer needed into a pile. He waited for night to fall, and then he took a large nut from the pile. Carrying it in his mouth, he left the small cave. Leaves rustled as he scurried over fallen limbs. He traveled along the trails he'd been so many times before in search of new treasure. Along the way, Nelson found a bright, shiny nail. The nail was smaller than the nut. He swapped the nut for the snail and returned home. Next, he picked up a pair of glasses he found hidden among some rocks. He dashed out of his room with them. It didn't take him long to find something he liked. On the trail, a coin that shone in the moonlight. Nelson swapped the glasses for the coin and hiked home. Next came a set of car keys from the pile. The large keys were hard to have carry. Nelson ambled out of the nest, dragging them behind him. If he hadn't been looking carefully, he never would have seen the safety pin at the edge of the trail. He exchanged the keys for a safety pin and dashed home, placing the pin amongst his prized collection. Once more, Nelson went over his pile. This time he lifted out a toothbrush. Nelson scuttled out of the cave to look for an item to replace the toothbrush with. He squealed with delight when he saw a ring mounted with a bright, shiny stone. "This is beautiful," he said, placing the toothbrush on the ground and examining the ring. Nelson gently picked the ring up in his mouth and headed for home. By the time he placed it next to all the other items he collected through the night, he was exhausted. 6 more days, said his mother when she passed by his room that morning. Nelson sighed. He'd need to work harder to swap everything in his pile. He knew if he searched farther out, he would be able to find some suitable things. He would look for shiny, bright objects, and maybe some unusual things. Night after night, Nelson swapped out his treasures. On the last night he left his room, a feeling of sadness washed over him. He had one more thing to swap: his favorite worn-out footy sock. He decided he no longer needed it and could live without it. He would find something else, something more special to swap it with. Nelson wiped away his tears. He knew he had to travel far that night to find something extraordinary enough to swap. Once again, he scurried over tree limbs and over the many trails. He ventured into new territory, going farther than he ever had before. He didn't stop until he found what he was looking for. Campers always have good things to trade, he said. Quietly picking his way through the tent, he saw something he didn't have. Nelson swapped his sock and took off before he was noticed with his new prized possession. "Well," Mrs. Packrat said the next morning, "it does look less cluttered. I don't know what you think you're going to do with that, though. She pointed to the unusual item. It's different, Mom. It's something nobody else has. I like it a lot. Okay, if it makes you happy, you can keep it. At about the same time, the camper awoke inside his tent to find Nelson Packrot's footy sock. What's this? Where did this come from? The camper scratched his head and lifted up the large, worn-out sock. Then he looked around. Something was missing. Hey, where have my false teeth gone? The end. And now we'll sing our children out.
Is with you always as you go, you go.
Please join me in the spirit of meditation and prayer with these words by Thomas Rhodes. Feel the earth beneath your feet as it supports you. Feel the love of this community as it surrounds and enfolds you. Feel your breath as it flows in and out of your body. Listen to your heartbeat. Listen to your heart. Take another breath and hold it for a moment. The air you hold in your body is the most precious thing in the world, for your very life depends on it. And yet none of us can hold on to it for more than a moment, or else we would strangle and die. What is most precious to us must be released, so that we may live and live fully. Look into your heart. Find what is there and hold it. The love you hold within your heart is the most precious thing in the world. And yet no one can hold on to it any more than your heart can withhold its blood, or else we would die from loneliness and misery. What is most precious to us must be shared, so that we may love and love fully. Look into your life at those things that are most precious to you. Look again. You will find that their value lies not in being held, but in being shared. Life, love, laughter, longing. May we share these precious gifts, that they may return to us, multiplied beyond measure. Blessed be.
Please join us up front, lighting candles for your cares, concerns, and with joyous announcements and celebrations.
I'm Tony, lighting a candle for a friend. Very good friend of mine lost his mother this week. Great lady, spent more than 100 years on this planet. She was truly remarkable.
I'm lighting a candle for the Glen Lake Elementary School in Hopkins, Minnesota, where the students, 3rd, 4th, 5th graders, saw their handicapped classmates were unable to participate in recess. They raised $300,000 with all kinds of help from adults, but $300,000 for equipment so that their classmates who were in wheelchairs, etc., could, sorry, I get a little choked up. This was on CBS News last week, and I'm so proud to have been a Minnesotan, and I just think they need the positive things that young people can do and are doing to make this world a better place to live.
I'm Karen, that's Tim, and he's lighting a candle for wishes that his heart surgery this Thursday goes well. He'll be having robotic surgery at University of Chicago.
I want to thank those of you who expressed their concern about my condition last week. I'm fine. I'm going in for more tests, and I'll be here.
I'm lighting 3 candles for you. Well, I guess I'll have to. For you, our friends, and the people who serve us in government. Thank you.
Our reading this morning is When Everything is Your Favorite Thing by Joshua Fields Milburn. When you get rid of most of your stuff, your life invariably changes. Without all the things in your way, you have the opportunity to focus on the most important aspects of your life. But there was also an unexpected benefit from my newly uncluttered life. Now, I truly enjoy everything I own. Before I embraced minimalism, I had a lot of stuff. A 3-bedroom house teeming with stuff. A basement and a 2-car garage filled with boxes overflowing with stuff. Spare bedrooms and closets and cabinets jam-packed with stuff. Every nook, every cranny, more stuff. It was hard to keep track of it, and all that stuff added very little value to my life. It often just made me feel anxious, overwhelmed, and depressed. I was unhappy with the way I felt, so I started questioning everything I owned. Today I don't own much, but the things I do own add immense value to my life. When I got rid of my extraneous material possessions, what remained were the things that I use every day. Now, nearly everything I own is my favorite thing. All my clothes are my favorite clothes. All my furniture are my favorite furniture. All my possessions are my favorite possessions, all of which I enjoy every day of my life. How about you? What if you enjoyed everything you owned? How would it make you feel if you were surrounded by your favorite things every day? So we've come to January, the beginning of a new year. And at this time of year, we're often thinking about new beginnings, renewal, resolutions, all those things. It's kind of, we often think of this as a time to start over. It's also a good time to think about all the things that we have and what we want. What do we want in our lives? What do we already have? What changes do we want to make? And as we do this discernment and questioning, we have to recognize that we live in a consumer society. A society says that we are valued by our possessions. Our worth is equated by what we own. And we constantly receive messages that having things will make us happy. All the commercials and ads that are out there are saying, oh, if you have this, this will make you happy. If you buy this product, this will make your life better. And particularly coming off of the Christmas holiday season, where those messages have been thrown at us for months, even more than they are during the rest of the year, and we have them a lot during the rest of the year. We're just inundated by this sense of if we have the right thing, the right things will happen for us. If we are happy when we have the things that we want, our value is equated to property. And I don't think that's really helpful or healthy for us. I think we need to think differently about how we engage our things, what we have in the world. And as we even think about what is helpful and healthy, even the understanding of what is healthy has become commodified. And we get messages of, if you just buy this right supplement or do this right exercise, or if you come to me and I will teach you the right way to be. Even our spiritual lives are the same way, where we can spend thousands of dollars to go on a retreat with some expert who has the key to making you happy, or the key to making you spiritually fulfilled. And I think that our role as people of faith is to counter this narrative, to counter this thinking, to find a different way of being in the world that doesn't center on the external, but centers on the internal. Now, I'm not advocating that we all should leave here right now and get rid of all of our stuff and take on vows of poverty. That's way too extreme. But I do think that we can do better about what we own and really thinking about our possessions. And ask questions of what are our relationships to the things that we own? And what are we looking to acquire? I like how in our reading he says, what if everything we owned was our favorite thing? Thinking about that, if you just was in your house and everything you looked at, you saw your favorite thing, you were surrounded by all your favorite things. That's a shift in your environment that helps your mood, that helps you kind of not worry about, oh, I've got to deal with all that clutter or all the things I need to do to clean the house because I've got all these things. But, oh, here's this thing that I love here. Oh, and I love that thing here. Oh, and that's to be surrounded by that, surrounded by things we love. And as we're doing that discernment, we have to interrogate, what do we need versus what we want? And I feel like our society really confuses the two all the time. At the very essential things need are the things that without which you will die. Your food, your water, some of your medications, that these things, clean air, these things that we need to actually survive, those are our needs. Our wants are often the things that will make us happy, or we think will make us happy, or we think will improve our life. And sometimes our wants keep us from finding the happiness inside ourselves. That the things that we want externalize all of that happiness instead of being able to find, is there something within me that can help me find that happiness? And if we can recognize what our needs are and what our wants are, we can then start to spend more time thinking about our wants and interrogate them and say, is this really what I want? Or is this something that I'm told that I should want? What meaning does that have for me? I think our 7 principles can be guideposts to help us reflect more deeply on our possessions, on our lives. The values that they lift up and hold really can give us a sense of what is important. What should we keep? So if we think about our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of all people, it asks us to consider, do I define my worth and dignity by what I have or by who I am? Do I hold on to things because they define my worth and dignity? And if they do, can I let them go and find my worth and dignity somewhere else? When several years ago, before one of the many moves that I've had in my life, I decided to do a cleaning of everything. And my basic, and I don't know if I came up with this or I read this or however I did it, but I started with a closet in my office, and I took 3 boxes. And one box was, this is the yes box, this is the immediate yes box. Another box was just the get rid of box. And then I had this box that was like, I need to consider box. And I basically went through and pulled everything, and I wasn't going to take time to consider things at that moment. I was like, pick something up, yes, consider, no. And I was just like cycling through. And there's quite a few things that was in the no box I realized I could let go of. There was a good amount in the yes box, and there was a significant part in the I need to consider box. And most of the things that were there were things like, oh, this was meaningful for me. Well, it was meaningful for me. And is this meaningful for me now? And I needed to take some time and look at it, and sometimes just touch it and hold it to kind of say, am I ready to let this go? Does this really have the meaning that it had when I first got it? And I would say about 90% of the things in the I need to consider box end up going into the no box. And it really helped me to really think about what are the things that were really important to me, and what are the things that had been important at a time, and I was holding on to that moment of time and not being in the present time. I kept moving from the, oh, I'm sure I could use it at some point, maybe, and after 5 or 10 years, if you haven't used it, you're probably not going to use it. And I'm in that space again where I'm going to need to do that sort of cycling and cleaning and letting go of some things. We also have the principle that talks about justice, equity, and compassion among human relations. And this asks us to consider where our stuff comes from. Who are we supporting by the purchases that we are making? Are we manifesting justice in our purchase decisions? In this, as fair trade products have become more and more available and popular, that has been a way to start thinking about, here's a way I can do some supporting of justice and be more ecologically focused through my purchasing. And looking at stores and really kind of having an awareness of where am I buying this product and what are the practices behind these companies are something that to really think about. It also asks us to think about if we're holding on to things that others could use and we no longer need, and to pass along our things. And so this is when we can take advantage of things like FreeCycle or other online places where you can say, I have this thing that I no longer need, and someone can say, I could use that, and you can you can kind of pass it off. Or someone, sometimes every once in a while I look through the listings just to see if I have something that someone is looking for. And I was like, I can give them that. And also giving things to thrift stores, particularly ones with a social justice focus, allows us to get rid of our things and also then allows us to support different causes as well. Thinking about what we do with what we own and what we buy is really important. It also helps to do some research on all the different companies and find if there are different companies, and there are lists on the internet that you can find that actually rates companies in terms of their labor, justice, ecology, and it's good to look at those and see who's rated over others, and that might make decisions, even in terms of things of like, I want to go to this store or the other, where you buy your gas, what restaurants you might engage in. So just having that research and awareness allows us to think about how we consume things. And our last principle asks us to respect the interdependent web for all existence of which we are a part. And in this asks us to think about the effect of our consumption on the earth. Thinking about all the packaging that comes with the things that we buy and how that fills up our landfills. Who uses recyclable products so that we can recycle things. And think about how we recycle. Do we compost or not? How can we minimize our effect and our impact on this earth that we are living? And how do we really use that lens as we do our own purchasing and shopping and engaging in what we own? Now, this all can feel overwhelming. There's a lot of things to keep in mind as you're thinking about what you own. But it doesn't need to be. At the very least, it's important to ask, why do I want this? And if you're satisfied with your answer, go for it. But take that moment to question. We can focus on educating ourselves on all the ecological and justice issues that affect consumer products, and continue that there's no brand or company that is going to be perfect, and just being aware of what choices we are making is important. And if you want to review your current possessions, you don't need to do it all at once. Break it up into manageable chunks and do just a little bit at a time. It could take all year. It could take a couple years to go through the process, and that's fine. It's not about how long it takes for you to do it. It's about the act of actually doing the work and spending the time and engaging. Our faith calls us to transcend the consumerism of our culture. So let's model a new way of living that is focused on character, not possessions. Remember, you can't take it with you. So what do you really want to leave behind? Blessed be.
That message was really hit home. Yesterday we had a worship team meeting, and Dave Lloyd was leading that discussion. And one of the words that came up, or one of the concepts, is what's the word of the year? And one of our friends, the word was purge. So it really hit home today, Reverend. What a message. At this point, we'd like to have you think about your contributions, and we have our offertory. And we so appreciate all that you give to us in so many ways. Let's conclude with the words that you see on the screen. The church is made up of all of us. As we learn together, the work we do together, the fun we have together, is what we share with one another, with the people around us, and with all the world. Now rise, you are as able, and join together in singing, "'Tis a gift to be simple." "'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, we'll be in the valley of love and delight. It's true, simplicity is gain, in all and in vain we can't be ashamed to turn. We'll be our delight, till by turning we come round right. Now we extinguish the flame.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of this community, nor the fire of our commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with all the world. let us close with these words. Let us be radicals. Let us find happiness in ourselves instead of in material things. Let us shop with awareness instead of abandon. Let us pass on what we no longer need instead of accumulating treasures. Let us live into our faith. Blessed be.
I have to say something here. My dear partner and I, Sarah, we moved, and after 12 years of never fighting over anything, seriously, we're amazing. We don't fight. We fought over stuff. Trying to figure out what stuff to bring, what stuff not to bring. So I thank you too. But I would like to talk just quickly. Nothing I've ever owned. I have a fancy electric car outside and everything else. The greatest gift I've ever received in my life is you.